I always thought betrayal would arrive like a hurricane, but mine came in a single, polite ping. Nathan was in the shower, steam curling out beneath the door like smoke from a house already burning. I just sat down on the edge of our bed, still in my blazer from work, heels kicked to the corner. His phone vibrated once on the nightstand, screen lighting up in the dim room like a warning flare. 7:30 p.m. Friday. Private balcony reserved. Gala night menu. Guest request noted. She'll love it. I didn't touch it, not at first. I just stared. Friday night was Roth and Caldwell's 75-year anniversary gala, the one Nathan had said was partners only. Black tie, invite only, full security, no plus ones this time. I'd smiled, said I understood. I hadn't been invited. A drop of water hit the floor from my hair, cold, slow, silent. My brain screamed no, but my hand moved. 4 digits. I didn't even think. The code hadn't changed. Our wedding date. I unlocked the phone like I was peeling back my own skin. First, the reservation email. Then, beneath it, a cascade of messages. Her name popped up over and over. Madeline Shore, photos, voice memos, jokes, outfit selfies. One picture stopped me cold. A hotel bed, white sheets, Nathan's watch on the nightstand, and her legs tangled in the frame. I didn't cry. I didn't even breathe. They had a folder together, shared in Google Drive. For when we sneak away. It was full of snapshots, itineraries, screenshots of poems, and private jokes. One note read, Gala's our night. Finally, no hiding. The sound of water cut off. A towel dropped on tile. Babe, you see my cufflinks? Nathan called out, voice casual, like he hadn't just torched 17 years with a dinner reservation. I closed the phone, placed it exactly where it had been. In the top drawer, I replied. My voice didn't shake. It didn't have to. He walked out in his robe, hair damp, smiling like a man who'd done nothing wrong. I looked at him. Really looked. The face I used to trace with my fingers felt suddenly foreign, like staring at a stranger in my own home. That night, I lay stiff beside him, back to his chest, eyes wide open. I counted his breaths until they slowed. Every exhale felt like a lie exhaled into my pillow. I'd once believed in us more than I believed in gravity. Now I believed in evidence. At 3:14 a.m., I slipped out of bed and into the office, downloaded everything to a private folder, backed it up on an encrypted drive, printed a few pages. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew better than to delete. There was one text from Madeline I couldn't unread. I still can't believe she doesn't know. No, I didn't know then. But now I knew everything. And in that moment, standing in the silence of our master bathroom, I knew exactly where I'd be at 7:30 on gala night. Revenge isn't rage. Rage burns fast. I needed something colder, something that wouldn't melt before the glass was raised. By sunrise, I had every message saved in 3 places. 2 clouds, 1 drive, no mistakes. I labeled the folder for gala use only. Subtle enough if anyone ever saw it, but I wouldn't let anyone see it. Not yet. Nathan left early that morning, said he was finalizing the gala speech. I smiled, kissed his cheek, and told him I was proud of him. I meant it. I was proud of how well I could lie now, too. By 9 a.m., I was logged into the university's research platform, cross-referencing Madeline's full name. Madeline Shore, Internal Communications, Roth and Caldwell. 10 minutes later, I had her wedding website, still active. Groom, Caleb Shore. Occupation, Principal Architect, Shore Design Group. He looked kind, warm brown eyes, slight lean. The kind of man who built dreams for a living while his wife was busy tearing one apart. I opened a new tab and drafted an email. Subject, Collaborative Design and Urban Strategy Panel, Private Gala Invitation. Dear Mr. Shore, I'm organizing a partnership showcase for Roth and Caldwell's 75th anniversary. Your work on the West River Line redevelopment caught our eye. Would you be available to attend as a potential guest speaker or strategic advisor? The gala is black tie this Friday evening, 7:30 p.m. at the Bellwether Grand Ballroom. Kindly confirm by Wednesday. I read it once, removed all emotion, then hit send. 12 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Honored by the invitation. I'll be there. Thank you, Professor Calder. Good. He didn't know yet, but he would. Not from me, not in a scream, but in silence when the right page turned. Later that afternoon, I called the firm's equity administrator. Kathy. Sweet, forgetful, always mixing up passwords. Hey, Kathy. Just flagging that Nathan's account keeps timing out when he's drafting equity reports. Mind resyncing his partner access window? She grumbled something about platform bugs, asked for a timestamp. I gave her one. 7 p.m. or Friday. Just 30 minutes before his speech. You sure that's when he usually logs in? She asked. Positive, I said, pouring myself a glass of water that tasted like steel. Let me know when it's set. I hung up and marked it in my calendar with a single word: lockout. The folder, the guest, the access, everything was now in motion. All I had to do was show up, dressed for a celebration I didn't believe in, sit quietly and watch the man I married crumble under the weight of a toast he thought would crown him. He thought betrayal was a secret between two people. He didn't realize it had a front row seat, and by the time Nathan raised his glass, his speech wouldn't be the only thing he'd lose. He once said the dress was too much for dinner. Good. Tonight it wasn't for dinner. I pulled the zipper up slowly, the fabric hugging like second skin. Black velvet, floor length, high neckline, no apology in the silhouette. It had sat untouched in my closet for 3 years, bought during a late night scroll, then laughed at by Nathan the next morning. Trying to outdress the room? He'd said. Not this time. Tonight, the room would answer to me. I stood in front of the mirror, quiet. No music, no tears, no mascara yet. My hands weren't shaking, but my ribs ached like they were bracing for an impact that hadn't hit yet. On the desk behind me, a black leather clutch. A printed folder labeled Internal Review, Hale Communications. My mother's old pearl compact, still carrying the faint scent of rose powder. I didn't pack tissues. I wasn't going to cry. One by one, I placed each item inside. The folder wasn't bulky, just a few pages of printed messages, some with timestamps circled in red, one hotel invoice, 2 selfies of Madeline, one of Nathan shirtless in a Santa Barbara suite. Enough truth to drown a man in a room full of champagne. Then came the final detail. I opened LinkedIn, found Caleb Shore's profile again, and studied the picture. Brown eyes, slight smile, navy suit. I wanted to know that face before I saw it shattered. Not for cruelty, just so I could meet his eyes and not flinch. At 5:30, I left the house. No perfume, no ring. Just a coat over velvet and silence in my throat. Instead of heading straight to the Bellwether Ballroom, I made a quiet turn and pulled into the Celeste across the street. The front desk didn't ask questions. Room 1704, City View. High enough to see the Gala's entrance. The suite was beige and clean. One glass, one bed, no distractions. I didn't sit. I stood by the window and watched the lights flicker on across the street. Cars rolled up. Guests stepped out in glitter and tuxedos. I spotted Roth, Caldwell, even Kathy from the admin team, laughing like the world wasn't about to tilt. A knock echoed in my memory. Caleb's RSVP. He'd be there. He had no idea why, but he'd come. My phone buzzed with a generic message from Nathan. Speech just got finalized. Hope you're proud of me. I locked the screen without responding. Proud? Number prepared? Absolutely. I reapplied my lipstick in the compact mirror. Red, sharp, clean. The kind that stays on through war. And before I left the room, I looked at my reflection. Not to admire it, but to memorize the woman who had stayed too long, believed too hard, loved too quietly. Tonight, she wasn't showing up for him. She was showing up for herself. He said the night was about honoring legacy. He had no idea I was about to end his. You're Professor Calder? His voice was warm, firm handshake, kind eyes, not a clue. Yes, I said, nodding with the practiced calm of someone standing on a minefield. You must be Mr. Shore. Thank you for coming. Caleb smiled, the kind that made you want to apologize before lying. I appreciated the invitation. Honestly, I've been wanting to attend one of these industry nights. I smiled back. Tonight will be memorable. We moved through the marble entrance of the Bellwether Grand, chandeliers blooming overhead like glass lilies, black tuxedos, silk gowns, gold lettering on signs that said 75 years of integrity. The irony nearly knocked me sideways. Caleb walked beside me, hands tucked in his pockets, relaxed. I kept pace, heels clicking, clutched tight under one arm. Inside it, the folder felt heavier with every step. So, urban strategy, huh? He asked, glancing at the stage being prepped. What are we hoping to accomplish tonight? Clarity, I said, soft enough he didn't question it. And maybe some overdue recognition. A string quartet warmed up near the back. Waiters floated with flutes of champagne. I accepted one, didn't sip. Our names were already printed on table cards. Calder, Shore, center table, front row, just feet from the podium. Of course Nathan had arranged that. Close enough to be seen applauding him. Close enough for the fallout to hit first. We sat. Caleb leaned toward me. I looked up your university's work after your email, he said. I didn't know you lectured on strategic exposure. That's a bold field. I met his gaze, careful not to blink. Some things are better seen than explained. He chuckled, polite, intrigued. And then the lights dimmed. Applause. A spotlight hit the podium. Nathan, there he was. Pressed navy tucks, polished cufflinks, the face of charm and stability, the face of betrayal wrapped in $800 cologne. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice smooth as ever, tonight we celebrate 75 years of partnership, of loyalty, of legacy built not just on deals, but on trust. My hand found the clutch. He smiled at the crowd. I felt my jaw lock. To my fellow partners, to the ones who stand by us when no one's watching. He lifted his glass. My fingertips slipped inside the bag. To loyalty, Nathan said. I turned to Caleb, voice barely above the hum of strings. Mr. Shore, I whispered, there's something I'd like you to read. And as Nathan raised his glass and said the word loyalty, that's when I slid the folder across the table. The first page made his eyebrows twitch. The second made his fingers tremble. By the third, Caleb's entire posture shifted, like the floor beneath him had tilted without warning. Nathan was still speaking. A future built on shared values, long-standing trust, and mutual commitment. The words rang out clean, confident, but his voice was starting to hitch, slightly, the practiced rhythm cracking at the edges. Caleb flipped another page. A photo. Nathan's watch on the hotel nightstand. A text bubble. I'll miss you after Friday. But that dress, don't take it off too fast. His grip tightened. The page crinkled. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I could feel the heat rising off his disbelief, the betrayal settling into his bones like frost. Then, ping. Nathan's phone buzzed once on the podium beside him. He glanced down without breaking stride, expecting another congratulatory text. But his eyes froze, locked, blinked. Access revoked. Primary account credentials. Invalid timestamp, 7 p.m. He stared at the screen like it was written in another language. Then he looked up, straight at me. And for the first time in years, he blinked first. I tilted my head, just a fraction, calm as glass. Across the ballroom, Madeline stood near the champagne tower in a scarlet dress that hugged her too tightly for the occasion. She laughed at something a partner's wife said until she saw Caleb. Not me, Caleb. The folder, the stiff jaw, the way he suddenly wasn't blinking either. She paled. The string quartet trailed off mid-note, the melody dropping like a breath caught wrong. Caleb closed the folder, placed it gently on the white linen table, and stood. His chair scraped loud against the marble. Not rushed, not dramatic. Just loud enough to cut through the air like a blade. People turned. Eyes followed. A waiter paused mid-pour. Nathan's hand twitched around his glass. The mic squeaked as he stepped back too fast. Caleb didn't shout. He didn't ask questions. He just walked. One foot after the other, past the tables, past the guests, past the lies. And as he passed Madeline, she reached for him. Caleb, please. He kept walking. Nathan looked down again, tapping furiously at his phone. Nothing worked. Locked out. Cut off. Disconnected from the very thing that once defined him. Photographers snapped. Laughter quieted. All that remained was the faint echo of string instruments and the sharp scent of citrus in my untouched drink. I reached into my clutch, pulled out my mother's pearl compact, clicked it open with one finger. I didn't say a word. I just looked in my compact mirror and watched him unravel. She ran after him, but shame doesn't wear heels well. Madeline chased Caleb out of the ballroom, her voice slicing through the murmurs. Caleb, wait, please. But he didn't wait. Didn't even look back. The ballroom door shut behind him like a verdict. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Instead, I stood, fixed the hem of my gown, and walked out through the main exit, unrushed, unbothered, untouchable. My heels clicked across the marble like punctuation marks in a sentence I'd been writing for months. Guests parted like curtains. Eyes followed, but mouths stayed shut. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Nathan's kingdom was made of glass, and I'd only tapped the first crack. Outside, the air was sharp with night wind and overwatered roses. I crossed the street back to the Celeste, nodding once to the doorman. No champagne, no tears. Just room 1704 and silence. In the suite, I kicked off my heels, slipped out of the velvet, left it draped across the chair like a story I didn't need to retell. I washed off the lipstick, lit a single bedside lamp, and curled onto the couch, knees to chest. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't proud. I was empty in a way that didn't ache. Just floated. Like the moment after a thunderclap when the storm pauses to listen. Then, a knock. Software steady. I froze. Crossed to the door in bare feet. Checked the peephole. Caleb. His tux jacket was gone. Shirt untucked, tie crooked. His eyes were red, but not wild. Just raw. I opened the door. I didn't know where else to go, he said. You shouldn't be alone tonight, I replied. He stepped in, slow, cautious, like the room might break if he breathed wrong. We sat in silence at first, two people stitched together by the same blade. No questions, no rehearsed lines. Then he spoke. She was the first person who believed in my work, he said, voice gravel. I nodded. Nathan was the first person who kissed me like I was permanent. He stared out the window for a moment. I should be angrier. I tilted my head. Why aren't you? He looked at me, the air heavy between us. Because tonight, someone chose not to protect a lie, and that's rare. We talked for an hour, maybe more. Not about them, not entirely. About the small ways we lost ourselves trying to be enough for people who were never full. About late-night doubts and early morning silences. About how betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. Caleb stood to leave just past midnight. He didn't ask for my number, didn't lean in, just paused at the door. If you ever want to talk again, Yob, he said, you don't have to send a formal invitation. I smiled, small, quiet. I'll keep that in mind. He walked out without another word, and I stood there, fingers grazing the doorframe, heart not quite broken, but aware. I didn't know if I could trust him, but somehow I knew he understood what it meant to be shattered. She meant nothing, Reese. Please, just let me explain. I didn't sit down. Didn't drop my keys, didn't take off my coat. I stood there in the entryway, watching him unravel in his own home. Nathan looked awful, tie loose, shirt wrinkled, hair crushed on one side like he hadn't slept. His voice cracked in all the wrong places, desperation mixed with just enough ego to make it sour. She was just a distraction. A mistake, he said, stepping closer, palms open like I might still reach for them. I didn't move. You called it love, I said quietly. I call it a series of choices, repeated, willfully, every day. He shook his head, pacing now, trying to catch up to a disaster already halfway out the door. You're going to ruin me, he muttered, more to himself than to me. The firm, my reputation, everything I built, you didn't build it alone. I cut in, voice flat. And you're not being ruined. You're being revealed. That stopped him. He turned, eyes wide. Whoa! What does that mean? I dropped my clutch on the table, opened it, pulled out one envelope. Simple, white, clean. I placed it down gently. Divorce papers. Filed Monday. His lips parted, but nothing came out. I've already spoken to Kathy at the firm, I added. She knows why the system locked you out. I told her the truth. His knees bent like the words were bricks. He sat on the armrest, silent. I also told your mother, I said. And Mark. And Jenna. Even that old friend from Stanford you keep bragging about on Christmas cards. His head dropped to his hands. You didn't just cheat on me, Nathan, I said, finally stepping forward. You lied with your whole body. With plane tickets, with red wine, with silence. He looked up, eyes glassy. I was tired. I thought we were drifting. We weren't drifting, I snapped. You were steering away and blaming the tide. He sobbed then, loud and jagged. I'm sorry, I swear, I'll do anything. Therapy. I'll beg her to disappear. I'll fix this. I stared at him. The man I used to believe would never lie to me, now broken on the couch we picked out during our 4th anniversary sale. You can't fix a foundation you've already rotted through. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. I'm not angry anymore. I said, I'm just done being quiet. The silence stretched long, heavy. His shoulders began to shake. I let him cry. Let him feel what it was like to be left holding nothing. Then I turned toward the door. You didn't fall from grace, Nathan. You handed it over one lie at a time. I got flowers on Monday, a handwritten letter on Tuesday, 4 pages of apologies on Wednesday. By Friday, I stopped opening the envelopes. Nathan was relentless. Calls, texts, voice memos that cracked mid-sentence like he was trying to cry on cue. I didn't respond. Grief doesn't answer the door when guilt comes knocking. The house was quiet now. No click of his keys at the door. No footsteps. No low phone calls at midnight when he thought I was asleep. Just coffee brewing in one mug. One set of slippers by the back door. One name on the lease that still carried weight, but not love. I cleared the last drawer he'd used. Left it empty on purpose. Not for someone new. Just for air. I signed up for a weekend photography course on a whim. No logic, no strategy. Just something to do with my hands besides closing folders and sealing goodbye letters. The instructor asked what I wanted to shoot. I said, stillness. He nodded like he understood. I found peace in capturing quiet things. Sunlight on glass, wrinkled hands on market tables, doorways that framed people who didn't know they were being seen. It gave me a kind of power I didn't know I'd missed, the ability to frame the world on my terms. One afternoon, I invited Caleb to speak at my university. The topic? Designing honest space in a dishonest world. He accepted, no hesitation. He stood in front of my students in rolled sleeves, unshaved, still wearing the storm in his eyes. And when he spoke, it wasn't polished. It was real. After class, we walked the quad. No touch, no promises, just 2 people who had nothing to prove anymore. I don't think I want to start over, I told him. He looked ahead, not at me. Me neither, he said. I just want to start. But from where I really am. We sat on a bench, no cameras, no scripts, just quiet. And for the first time, that felt like enough. Some evenings he'd text a photo, an empty bench, a crooked lamppost, a coffee cup alone on a counter and ask, would you frame this? Sometimes I'd reply yes. Sometimes I wouldn't. Because healing doesn't always look like connection. Sometimes it just looks like space. By spring, the house no longer felt haunted. The silence between apologies stopped humming like a song I couldn't escape. It became still. Gentle. Mine. I didn't sell the place. Didn't redecorate all at once. I just moved a few things, planted a fern, let go of a bedspread he picked out, bought a new mirror, and on a Wednesday, I caught myself laughing while dusting. No one heard it. No one had to. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I was finally home to myself. You look different. The voice came from behind me, tentative, rough around the edges. I turned. Nathan Hale stood near the wine table, gaunter than I remembered, tie askew, temples silvered with guilt. He held a glass of red he hadn't touched. I didn't think you'd come, he added. I was invited, I said simply, offering no more. Professor Benson's retirement gala was soft lit, elegant, warm jazz curled through the air. The room smelled of tulips and old books, just the way she would have liked it. I wore navy satin and my mother's pearls, clean, whole. Nathan shifted his weight. She's the only one who still returns my emails, he said, nodding toward our former mentor. Everyone else stopped talking after that night. I waited. He wasn't done. I lost more than my position, he said. More than the board seat or the dinners. I lost myself. I looked at him then. Really looked. Gone was the smooth confidence. Gone was the man who once lit a room just by pretending he wasn't lying. In his place stood someone smaller. Not just physically, but spiritually. A man who had burned the bridge and now stood choking in its smoke. I'm not angry anymore, as I said. His eyebrows lifted, surprised. But I'm not sorry for what I did, I continued. You weren't the only one who lost something. I just refused to stay lost. He nodded, swallowing something bitter. I deserve that. Maybe, I said, and then glanced toward the ballroom door. Caleb had just arrived. Clean-cut, steady, wearing a quiet charcoal jacket. He walked in with his hands in his pockets and an open smile I hadn't seen in a long time, not even at the gala where everything collapsed. Nathan followed my gaze. His shoulders dropped a little more. You and him? He asked without bite. I didn't answer right away. We understand each other, I finally said. Not because of what happened, but because of what we did with it. He looked down at his untouched wine. I don't wish you pain, Nathan, I said softly. I just hope the next time you raise a glass, you understand the weight of the name you left behind. He nodded. No excuses. No defense. Just a man standing in the shadow of his own past. I turned, walked toward the dance floor where Caleb waited, already extending a hand without needing to speak. We moved in rhythm beneath the golden chandelier, the music slow, the moment gentle. No promises, no performance, just presence. I didn't check if Nathan was watching. He'd already seen everything he needed to. And that night, under golden lights, I danced. Not as someone's wife, but as someone finally whole. Everything in this house used to have a shared name, until I started carving mine into the silence. The deed, the email signature, even the guest towels. Little things once chosen for us now stood as quiet reminders of who I'd become without him. The photo above the mantel? Gone. The joint anniversary wine rack? Donated. But the oak desk by the window, that stayed. It was always mine. He just sat beside it. Most people think revenge ends in fireworks or flame. But real reclamation? It happens in the quiet. In clean sheets, late coffees, full drawers that no longer need to be shared. I didn't burn the house down. I repainted it. It wasn't about Nathan anymore. Not about what he did, or what he begged for after. This story stopped being about betrayal the moment I chose not to respond. It became about building, on my terms. I started a series for my students called Designing After Disruption. Caleb helped lead one of the sessions. He spoke of resilience like someone who had lived it, not just drafted it in pencil. He never stayed too long, never pressed for more. He showed up, listened, laughed when I actually laughed. One Sunday morning, we walked the river trail. No hands held, no destination set. There's something different about starting from scratch, he said, eyes scanning the water. I nodded. I'm not starting from scratch, I said. I'm starting from what survived. We paused by a bench I'd once photographed. Empty then, but no longer. We sat. He pulled out his sketch pad. I pulled out my camera. Nothing said. Nothing needed. I'd stopped asking what came next, because next was already here. Not perfect, not promised, but real. I published a short essay a month later, personal, reflective, for a university collection. The title? The Toast That Took My Name. My name, alone. No joint byline, no co-signature, no husband leaning over my shoulder, asking if it sounded too sharp. The final line read, "He took my name out of a toast. I wrote it back into my life. And this time, every word belonged to me." There's a quiet kind of power in walking away without slamming the door. Not because you're weak or passive, but because you finally realize that not every fire deserves your oxygen. Sometimes choosing yourself isn't loud. It's the silent act of no longer explaining, no longer waiting, no longer shrinking to fit the shape of someone else's comfort. We're taught to believe that loyalty means endurance, that love requires compromise, that forgiveness is always noble. But there's a line, thin, often invisible, where compromise becomes erasure, where silence becomes self abandonment. The hardest lesson isn't how to hold on, it's how to let go with grace and still keep your wholeness intact, because healing doesn't always look like starting over with someone new. Sometimes it's starting again with who you were before the quiet became unbearable, before the questions stopped getting answered, before the person in the mirror felt like a background character in their own home. You don't have to burn bridges to leave. You don't have to shout to reclaim your name. You just have to choose, quietly and clearly, that you are done being someone else's afterthought. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is live well in the silence they thought would break you. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you've made it to the end, I want you to know your presence here matters. And if any part of this story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt overlooked, silenced, or had to rebuild from the ashes of someone else's choices, you're not alone. This space was made for people like you, for quiet strength, for honest reckoning, and for stories that don't rush healing just to find a happy ending. If this story resonated, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Whether you're still in the thick of it or already on the other side, your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you'd like more stories that speak to that deep part of you, the part that doesn't always shout but never gives up, feel free to like, share, or subscribe. Only if it feels right. Until next time, take care of your peace. You deserve a life that doesn't ask you to shrink to be loved.